कृष्ण नाम संकीर्तन की जय। बहुत प्रेमानंद। हरे कृष्ण। Welcome, welcome. How's everything? Yeah, yeah. We've had a nice visit so far. We've been very well received in London, and our first night was at the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Math London chapter. There's two branches there, two temples they have, and each of the devotees who lead the two temples. I've known for about 40 years, and I was able to assist them in fulfilling one of the desires of Guru Maharaj, Tripurari Maharaj, who asked me if I could engage a couple of the disciples of Prabhupada who had taken sannyas from him, who were living at the mosque. He wanted to get them active and so forth. So I said I would try. I knew them, of course, the godbrothers of mine, and same time he expressed his anxiety that a house had been purchased in London to be the London chapter of the Chaitanya Saraswat Math, which was a big thing. You can imagine Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada wanted to reach out to the rest of the world with Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and England, Great Britain was the most powerful nation in the world, and it was also India became one of its colonies. The relationship between India and Great Britain is interesting and a huge subject of ongoing research and discussion, and books and so forth. But Calcutta was the crown jewel of the British Empire, and quite an interesting place of that many different peoples were different types of thinkers and whatnot were could be found throughout. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, initially he asked that Sridhar Maharaj would go to Britain, Great Britain, to represent him and so forth. And later he said that I had chose Sridhar Maharaj because I knew he could never be converted. But Guru Maharaj, he replied to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that humbly that Guru Maharaj, whatever you desire, request, I will do. But if I may, let me offer some suggestion. So there's some room for that. But he doesn't have to take your suggestion either. There's room for you to make a suggestion, but he doesn't have to accept it. That's where some people have made mistakes in the past. So his suggestion was that there are others amongst us, the disciples, who can speak better English than myself. Although I have to say that I met Guru Maharaj in the twilight, if you will, of his life, and he was wondering why he was still here when so many other godbrothers had passed away, and especially Swami Maharaj, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who he affectionately referred to by his sannyas name, Swami Maharaj. who was so traveling, so robustly around the world, and seemed ostensibly to be much healthier. Peter Marsh was 80% blind and infirmed um, during most, if not all, of Prabhupada's campaigning. So he never expected to outlive his godbrother. I think he was maybe a year or two older than Prabhupada. Um, and my point is that we have to sit on his veranda as we did in those days, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, him answering questions, and the way he would answer the questions, he would forget about the questions and just be taken into the stratosphere of his preoccupation and so forth. And his deep, deep penetration into transcendence, and from there he spoke, and with reference to many Western philosophers and so on and so forth. So he would bring that down to earth, and in a very, very poetic, eloquent manner. So I understand what he meant when he said to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his Guru Maharaj, there are others amongst us who can speak better English, but we would beg to differ at the same time. Not that we heard all of those others. Some were more trained, better trained in English, is of course what he meant formally, but his English was very, very, very charming and powerful. We're fortunate that so much of it had been recorded and with permission from him, turned into a number of very electrifying texts, especially in their time, as texts are, especially when they come out. Not that they don't endure for a longer time than that, they do, but you write a book or you speak something in the Times, and it's most pertinent, or all of it is pertinent. Then maybe some of it may not be later and so forth. But anyway, they are there to be taken advantage of. So I know most of you have done that, but for those of you who haven't, or even those that you have, they can be revisited. And when we went to the Moth in the London chapter there, um, they had some new books they had churned out from his speeches and so forth. I was gifted. And of course, they received my books very nicely, very, very thankfully as well. But aside from his first point, that there may be others amongst us who can speak better English, he said, my second point is that I am also very introverted in nature, and others amongst us are very much more outgoing and more inclined to interact with the general public. So there may be others amongst us who are better suited. These are all relative considerations that he was presenting, obviously. But they do have a place, relative considerations. For example, in this regard, it said in Hari Bhakti Vilas, book of Sanatana Goswami, that if you are from a Brahmin family, you should have a Brahmin guru. If you're from a Sudra family, you should have a Sudra guru, something, like that. So what is he talking about there? He's talking about the fact that there are maybe relative considerations that may be helpful with regard to the exchange between a guru and disciple, which is one of communicating ideas, concepts, and so forth. So the more that the same psychology, upbringing, background, caste, as it is in this case, well, you have so much in common. I've said before that sometimes sitting with Prabhupada in the darshan in India, some Indian boys would come, and after the lecture, Prabhupada would say, "So," to them in Bengali, and do you understand the lecture? And they would say, "Yes, Swami, yes." He said, "Then all right then." And then there was a communication going on that we didn't realize but they understood, and so they would be found afterwards washing pots In, it meant if you understood what you get the point, right? So they had there was a kind of a unspoken cultural communication, if you will. So relatively speaking, that may be an advantage. But it's only a relative consideration. You have to understand what the statement is when it says if you have if you're a Brahmin, born in a Brahmin family, you should have a Brahmin guru. He's speaking about Gopal Bhatta, Sanatana Goswami, authors of Bhagavad Bhakti Vilasa, about Vaishnavism. If you're a Sudra guru, a Kshatriya guru. If you're not in the caste, it didn't say this, but someone like me. but in all cases, what's being said is what? This kind of guru, this kind of guru, this kind of guru, this kind of guru. All of the thises are relative. But the guru is the guru. Guru has certain other qualifications, right? Shabde parecha nishnatam brahmani upashamashraya. Well versed in the sacred text from a theistic point of view. And as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this verse I just cited, conversant also with other texts that represent the thinking of the time, the philosophical currents of the time, and so forth, that the teaching of the sacred text may be presented in light of those as they are in their times. For example, let's say the commentaries on Vedanta of well, let's take the Govinda Bhasha, or second Adhyay is all about Sankhya, Yoga, Karma Mimamsa, Vaisheshika, these other darshans or philosophical systems of the time that were current, and accepting part of them, rejecting part of them, and so on and so forth. So to be familiar enough with the sacred text, and in light of the current thought of the time, that they may be presented thoughtfully, and that be that much more readily understood, right? So Shabde Pare Nishnatam and Brahmani Upashamashrayam. So theoretical knowledge on the one hand, and real standing in transcendence on the other. Harnessing, as I've rendered the verse that I'm just citing, the ability to harness the human passions, which is what I call miraculous. You might agree with me if you think about it. I've given an example before. I was sitting with Prabhupada in Hyderabad, and there was a pandal that had been arranged. Pandal means like a big tent. 50,000 people came to hear Prabhupada speak. It was a big program. Prabhupada speaking from the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, the teachings of Rishabh Dev. Some heavy teachings there. And uncharacteristically, Prabhupada, it had been arranged that Prabhupada would accept some questions from the audience after the talk. In the early days in New York, when he began in San Francisco, he did ask for questions, but he stopped after a while. But this was much later. On this occasion, questions had been written by some persons and then handed to those persons, and the system this for the night was to be that Prabhupada would hear the questions and answers. So one fellow asked, Swamiji, have you done any miracles? And Prabhupada, when I was sitting right there, he said, you see this boy, he has given up sex. That is my miracle. And they all went like, Bhishma, oh my God, that's miraculous. It was very, this is what I call, how I would define Shastra Nipun. Shastra Nipun is a quality of or a characteristic of the most qualified person in the path, the Uttamadikari. His adhikar, his eligibility is uttam, superlative. There may be an intermediate level of insight and eligibility and a beginning or neophyte. So uttam, madhyam, kanishtam, up to down. Shastra nipun, So scriptural genius. This is one of the ways also, incidentally, in which Saraswati Thakur once described Sridhar Maharaj, Shastra Nipun Sridhar Maharaj, he said. But it's not just a question of memorizing lots of verses, but be able to say things like how Prabhupada answered that question. Was there like, or another example I've given before, when Prabhupada was asked by one of his disciples, that Prabhupada, you have written that Krishna's father, Nanda Maharaj, has 900,000 cows. I said, yes, good herd. And then he said, but Prabhupada, there's also a calculation given in the text as to how big Vrindavan is. And I did the measurement, and 900 cows, 1,000 cows won't fit there. And Prabhupada's answer was, you read too much. Oh. Which is, it's actually a very good answer, which is true. He's trying to go there with his head only. He's trying to fit it all in the head, where the text is actually trying to take you out of your head, trying to help you to stop thinking so that you can know in a way that's not as stunted as you could know simply by the exercise of your head, as I've said before. What is the problem with intellect in terms of its capacity to give us comprehensive knowing? The problem with intellect is that it arises out of ignorance. Now you have to tell that to the Enlightenment here in England, and those who are taken by that, in Europe, around the rest of the world, extolling as they do the virtues of reason, with the idea, the mistaken idea that by its exercise, in due course, we'll become perfectly happy, which is the goal of everyone, right? To arrive at the kind of knowledge by which our actions will be so informed that they will give us the result of perfect happiness. I mean, we've been using reason, humans, for a long time in this effort, and we don't find anyone that is anywhere near as happy as those few who stop thinking, or stop the mind enough to transcend its limits and let the self come out from underneath that mental, intellectual oppression. Gyan Shunya Bhakti would be a way in which we refer to that in a higher sense within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but all schools of yoga are. They say to us that there's something about you, the essence of yourself, that transcends the limits of reason, of thought, and action, driven by, hopefully by thought, good thoughts, and reasoning, or anyway, body, mind, intellect. These are all coverings of the self. Through these mediums, we're seeing the field as if like a hole in the fence we're looking through. It's not because we have eyes that we could see. They're getting in the way of seeing what's actually there. You're getting only a distorted picture with our senses. Doesn't mean we don't have, there's no place for using the senses, the mind, and the intellect. Of course there is. What does Krishna say in the Gita? Regarded the mind, which is psychic matter. It's the enemy of the Atma, and its friend as well. If it's trained properly, it can be trained. If our thoughts are only about things, well, that's a problem. We can wean the mind from thinking about things by directing the mind through the help of revelation about its implications, the nature of the self, and so on and so forth. So, Shastra Nipun, anyway, it's a very wonderful quality, Shastra Nipun, it's not just memorizing verses and so forth. So, anyway, he said what? He said that, and again, let me, before we go on with that, emphasize this point. Intellect, very interesting point. It is born out of avidya. Avidya is the basis of material existence. Avidya means ignorance. It's the identification with matter. It's the pursuit of enduring happiness in relation to things that don't endure. That just is ignorance. It gives birth to suffering. So intellect, mind, senses, these are all karmic products. None of these karmic products have value. You can't barter with them. You can't trade them because they're of a temporal nature. You can't trade them for real estate in a land where there's no death. You can't barter with the temporary to purchase the eternal. You've got counterfeit currency. You will be exposed. This is the counterfeit. No. Because again, doesn't mean we can't use our mind, senses, and intellect. Indeed, the Bhagavatam demands it, pushes back very strongly on the intellect and reasons we should why we should use the mind and senses and so forth for in our reasoning for transcending their limits. So reason itself, according to our school of Vedanta, and it's very well thought out, arises out of ignorance. Therefore, if you want to know what the self is, it's not going to appear in the court of reason. But to speak of God, we're a spark of the fire, the spark. They transcend that. It's not unreasonable. It's reasonable to make this point, but to realize it, it requires a transrational exercise. This is our reasoning. We should embrace a transrational exercise to come to comprehensive knowing, by which we can become perfectly happy. So anyway, Pujapat Sridhar said, I'm not the best one because I'm introverted in nature, and I'm not the best one for speaking English. These are, again, relative considerations. Relative considerations have their place, right? So if you're a Brahmin, you get a Brahmin guru. If you're Brit, you get a British guru, you say, right? But in any case, this side is changing. Whether you're British or Indian, you're a Sudra, you're a Varna, you're this, that, or the other thing. But the other side is guru, 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 guru. That's all the same. And the qualities of the guru are not where he's born, what is her nature, nationality or gender or any such things, right? Guru is clearly defined, as transcending all such considerations. The teaching that he or she is embodying and disseminating, it transcends those designations. Shabde pare chanishnatam brahmani upashamashram. One such of many verses describing the characteristic of the guru. Brahmane upashamashram. Learn it in the scripture and standing in transcendence, right? Standing in transcendence. So able to harness the human passions. I've said before that sometimes people ask, they say that they don't believe in God because they've never seen God, or they maybe never seen any evidence that's convincing evidence that God exists. So my reply could have many replies, but one of them is, you have not seen God. You have not seen any evidence support the idea there's a God. Let me show you love of God. This is very objective. Let me show you love of God. And my theory is, if there is love of God, then there must be God. Now we have to define what is love of God. But this is one of the things that are included in love of God. Brahmane upashamashrayam, harnessing the human passions. It's a miracle. You see? Now the subjective experience of the lover, the mystic, is not something we can show. I can say I have experienced that I'm eternal. Well, I can't show you that, right? You can either believe me or not. What more can I say? It's a subjective experience. You could say, well, you think you're eternal, but your body dies. I said, I know my body dies. I know I'm not the body. That's why I know I'm eternal. Hmm. But I mean, people don't necessarily have to believe you, but you could be believable for reasonable people if there were some objective um, evidence to accompany and support the subjective experience that you're speaking about. And so, what is the objective evidence? Hmm. This is the evidence to harness the human passions. That's miraculous. Hmm. Hmm. And we can see that, of course, cross culturally, in different mystic. There'd be Rumi from the Sufis in the Middle East, or so many, so many Catholic saints, let's say, or India, so many saints. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would be, of course, our best example. Swayam Bhagawan himself in the form of a sadhu. Krishna in the midst of the depth of the Rasalila, his mind was just blown by the love of the Gopikas and how he wanted to test it to see in the absence of their object of love, which should make their heart grow fonder, how much it would grow. And it grew in his absence when he disappeared from their midst to such a measure that he confessed that he could not reciprocate with them in kind. He said that their love was like that of a sadhu, mm, mm, sadhuna, saintliness. Mm. So he reasoned at that time that I can't repay you, but maybe if I become a sadhu, and I tell people about the measure of your sadhuness, once in a day of Brahma, over and over again, maybe I'll be able to pay you back. And maybe I'll be able to taste that myself. So my other, this is my nature. I'm a rasika. And you see, one of the beautiful things about Madhurya Rasa, it has something in common with Sakya Rasa that Vatsalya Rasa and Dasya Rasa, to speak of Shanta Rasa, don't have in common. And this is called uh, pranay, which implies an equality. An equality. So equality between friends is like central to friendship, equals. And whereas, comparatively, in parental love, the parent and the child, they're in different positions, or the teacher and the student, they're in different positions, right? That's why if the student becomes friendly, bringing an apple to school, and his or her uh, dasya becomes tinged with a little sakya, then it becomes better. You come closer, you can communicate better, and so forth, right? So we're looking for friends, but not fully. That would be a problem. Uh, so so and similarly, well, Dasiras and Vatsalyaras, there's this inequality. It has they have their own virtues and so forth. But in friendship, there's equality. That's why at the end of his discourse on Sakyarasa in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Jiva Rupa Goswami makes a statement that amongst the rasas of Vatsalya, Dasya, and Sakya, some say that Sakya is the best because of this equality. You know who did that? Jiva Goswami in his Preeti Sandarbha. He changes the order. He says, do you get the order in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? First comes Shanta, then Shanta has the qualities of Shanta are present in Dasya, plus more. Then the qualities of Dasya are present in fraternal love or Sakya and more. And then Vatsalya and so forth. And then Madhurya. But Jiva Goswami changes the order and puts Sakya just below Madhurya. So, but Rupa Goswami said, no, that's also another way of looking at it. Jiva Goswami his disciple picked up on that and made quite a bit of it. And of course, it's understandable. There is a quality in Vatsalya that we don't find in Sakya, kind of a nourishing, a nourishing. So there's a quality that's not there. But at the same time, in friendship, there's an intimacy that exceeds that of parental love. This pranay. In other words, amongst friends, we might keep, if we're young, like Krishna's friends, you might keep secrets from your parents, right? There's a kind of intimacy that transcends the intimacy that you could have with your parents. But when we go to Madhurya Rasa, well, lover and beloved, also there's equality here. But there's an equality which makes for qualitative experience that is equal. But the difference, and this is only relative to the Braj Rasa, the Braj romanticism. In ordinary Shringar or romantic relationships, as espoused by the aestheticians that preceded Rupa Goswami, Bharata, Vishwanath, Abhinav Gupta, and so many. There's a long tradition of Indian aesthetics and so forth. In that tradition, of course, bhakti is not seen as a rasa. The relationship with God is not seen as a rasa. The relationships are amongst humans, with one another, and so forth. Rupa Goswami gives another idea. Let's put God in the sense of a relationship with Him, and we'll find rasa with Him that is enduring, eternal, and so forth. So anyway, with regard to Madhurya Rasa, then it said the woman and the man, they experience equally on either side. Well, Krishnadas Kaviraj says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, just see this Madhurya Rasa of Radha and Krishna, that it exceeds the idea of Bharat. And what is that? The difference is that quantitatively, I mean, how can you quantify such things? It's difficult to say. We're deep in the subjective realm. But quantitatively, in the relationship between Radha and Krishna, Radha's experience exceeds that of Krishna. The quality is the same. It's the same quality, but the quantity is different. And as I said before, this is a good point, and we're all here because of it. What do I mean? We're all here because of it, because that gives birth to Gaur Leela. Krishna says, I've got to taste that. I've got to get more of that. So the inevitable encore of Krishna Leela, Gaur Leela. So how do we get there? Yeah, we're way back. That's way back there. So, Pranay, yeah. The qualities of the ranking of the us. Yeah, but we were talking about the gurus. Friendship. Not too much. Anyway, guru is one side, all the same, right? There may be other relative considerations. You need to find a qualified guru, right? Qualified Siksha Guru, qualified Diksha Guru, so forth. So it'll maybe come back. But anyway, so Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, he made these arguments, if you will, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, or these suggestions Others may be more qualified, speak English. I'm more introverted. Not Others may be more outgoing in nature, and they may be in a better position to represent you. These were his two points, and then he made a third point, which was, and you may not be amongst us for much longer. I don't know how long, but I feel that I can take advantage of your personal association. So I don't want to go to England. I want to stay with you. That's basically what he said. And
main reason.
Yeah, that was the main reason. Right? The others were just excuses that he was giving. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took his advice. You can imagine how he was charmed by that last reason. But later he said, "But I had chosen Sridhar Maharaj originally because I knew he could never be converted." Turns out the representative that he did send for relative considerations had a slight conversion that he made up for later. That's a long story. He came back and said, "They have questions we can't answer." Bhaktisiddhanta was not pleased with that. He said, from a particle of dust from the lotus feet of Gorkashodas Babaji, there's more knowledge enough to drown the whole world, which is the whole world's knowledge is, after all, arising out of avidya. Right? He said earlier, arising out of ignorance. So, in this way, by the time we had met Guru Maharaj and some of his students had gone ahead and started a chapter in England, it was a big thing for him. That he was there in the time Bhaktisiddhanta wanted such a thing, and what it would have meant for Indian missionaries going to England when the missionaries of Great Britain had come to India to do, in particular, to do away with idol worship. Oh, how horrible! And the immorality that is embedded in their very religion with this playboy or a god. Just they're very, very strong on this point. Some people caved to that. Some caved to that without caving entirely to and being converted to Christianity. They caved on those points and said, but really, that's not what our religion is about. That's just been made up by other people. Our religion is about we are all Brahman, Advaita Vedanta, and so forth. This is a very rational, very reasonable, without religious baggage and so forth, as it would be seen. So it was. This is how Advaita Vedanta started to become so popular, and Vivekananda made Ramakrishna into a Vedantin, which he really wasn't. He was a tantric fellow, and then he came to America and espoused Advaita Vedanta at a time when Darwinism was challenging the faith of some Christian people. And he said, Indians have been evolutionists for eons. He gave some idea about how to think about evolution, which wasn't very understood at the time itself. Anyway, so this all came out of Bengal. I just make it a point as an aside because it was Bhakti Vinod Thakur in that milieu who pushed back entirely on the British and said, no, if you can put God to pen by writing about him, why can you not put him into picture with a paintbrush? Why can you not manifest him symbolically in the deity? It's a good reasoning. He pushed back on this point. And of course, with regard to the immorality, if you will, as it was thought of Krishna, he pushed back very strongly on that as well in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. came to the world, and here we all are. Right? It's making good progress against Advaita Vedanta. Mm. Making good progress against that. Now in all the universities, it will be seen as the other Vaishnav schools of Vedanta will as alternatives, ideas of the Hindus, when previously it was thought across the board, Hinduism means Advaita Vedanta, ultimately. Mm. See, that's a big thing. Mm. You're looking for a big thing. When I was a kid, when I was young, I should say, it was a big thing. Prabhupada was making devotees, and temples were opening everywhere, and books were coming out, 50,000 books a month, new book. We didn't know if he'd have 4 heads, 8 heads, 10 arms, or what, It was very exciting and so forth. It may seem a little quieter now, but there's big waves and there's small waves, but the waves keep coming. Waves keep coming. Endless. They keep coming. This is one of the things that Prabhupada did, and some of his students and whatnot are helping with that, where they write about Gaudiya Vaishnava, members of our Parivar. And really, I can tell you that Gaudiya Vaishnavism is by far the most interesting school of Vedanta amongst academics who are interested in the subject, in Indology. It's just too rich. It has bodies that are spiritual. It's one thing to say, you're not the body. The body is Maya. It's illusion. It's temporary. Your consciousness. End of the story. But now the whole other side, and they're spiritual bodies and spiritual emotions, and it's very fascinating. And this concept of the deity, books have been written about that, theses, PhD theses, and so forth. See how this is all coming from Bhaktivinoda Parivar, our lineage. Very, very powerful. Even as the world of philosophical thought today is experiencing a turning, the beginning of a turning point. What is the term? A paradigm shift from this reductive materialism. Everything is physical, and we're just going to, so life has no purpose, no meaning. Consciousness is just a function of the brain. There's no supernatural, there's no soul, there's no God. People ask, do you believe in the soul? I say, do you believe in consciousness? I mean, that's like kind of a stupid question, right? So that's how stupid your question is, I say. Just a question now of defining consciousness. You want to define it as a firing of some neuron in the brain? Well, show it to me, because you can't do that. You've been trying since 1926. Since 1926. To reduce consciousness to, as soon as consciousness became important, because an observer was seen to be part of what makes the world go round. It causes the wave function to collapse, and a system that in the subatomic world has superpositions. It's here, it's there, it's here, it's there at the same time. And when the wave collapses, one of those potentials becomes a material reality. This is a quantum perspective. We would identify with, early thinkers, big thinkers like Eugene Wigner, for example. You might have heard of him, philosophy students. Yeah, he made the simple point that collapsing of the wave by which a material potentiality becomes a material reality. Well, nothing that comes out of that is a material reality can be the cause of the collapse. It's come out of the collapse. Therefore, that which causes the collapse has to be immaterial. Immaterial is another way of saying spiritual, transcendental consciousness. So this is changing. Now, this is the dominant thinking, not what I'm saying. We accepted what Wigner has said, but that it can be reduced. Consciousness is only the brain, but that has changed. People are just having a difficult time to demonstrate that. You're up against a brick wall. Every month a new theory comes out, and nobody um, appreciates it, but a few people who are the followers of the guy that came up with it. And in the field, everybody disagrees with him or her, so forth. So, and where, if anywhere, outside of their own discipline, such people in the field of science of mind and preoccupied with this subject, where have they looked beyond their own discipline, if anywhere? To the East, to Bharat, to India, where consciousness has been the subject, and not just the subject of what probably we call armchair philosophy, right? Where they put it into practice, and we find a few happy people, right? A few happy people that have harnessed their passions. They're happy. They can sit. The Buddha, he just sat with an easy path. I've said before. Just sit. That's it's not so easy, right? Why? Because we have a momentum for going for eons of chasing after things, thinking that by acquisition, the emptiness that we feel or the lack that we feel will be overcome. Only to find that the things that we've chased and we've gained are lost in due course. That's just the nature of the beast, right? So when Buddha realizes, so he just sat down, but he's the Buddha. He's a Vishnu avatar, right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and given a better, easier path. If you can use your momentum, keep the momentum, which is pursuing things. Pursue things for Krishna. Right? You're pursuing sense objects for the pleasure of your senses. Pursue them for the pleasure of Krishna's senses, and your senses will be pleased too. Mahaprasad, Jai. So anyway, there's a change. There's a change. It's coming. It's coming. It might not be in my lifetime, but they will come to the conclusion that consciousness is not a product of the brain. There are some are already saying now. You know the difference between materialism and idealism? They're like opposite. Physicalism and idealism. The former is everything is just physical. The latter is everything is spiritual. Well, let's reduce the physical, the objective realm, to the subjective realm. After all, the subjective realm is more complex than the objective realm, way more complex. Just, I give an example I gave the other night. I go in Avdari and I stand out on the deck on a full moon night and I see the moon. I do marvel at how they went there. That's fascinating. The math that was involved in that, the physics and so forth. I mean, that's just mind-boggling to me how they went there. Very complicated, right? They went to the moon, stood on the moon. But what were they looking for? Really? They were looking for themselves. Everyone's looking for themselves. Thinking maybe I'll get a better view on the moon. So they have not understood the simplest word in the English language. I. It's the simplest word, the single one-letter word. It's the most used word and the least understood. And that's what we're focused on. Understand I. What am I? I am not this. I am not that. That changes. I could be this. I could be that the next day. But I am in all instances. What does that mean? What to speak of? I am a gopi. I am a gopa. That is like so high. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching. Let the world move from materialism to the idea that consciousness is independent of matter. Let them become Mayavadis. We'll celebrate the day. But don't think that Mayavad is winning. That's where they'll go first. Then we can really have such a we can have a good conversation. What is the nature of consciousness? Hmm? Is it just the absence of the physical? Hmm? I was speaking about this the other night, if I may repeat myself. Consciousness, um, in a lower sense, has been said to be, or defined as, in today's world, as what it's like to be a bat. The famous book like that. What it's like to be a bat, or what it's like to be a cow, what it's like experience. Mm-hmm. This is a well, compelling and a profound explanation, but it's very abstract at the same time. Mm. Well, yeah, we say a little bit more about the nature of consciousness. We say that it's sat. It's sat. What does that mean? Sat. It exists. When we use the term sat, when we say something exists, we're also saying it's true. Mm. That means it doesn't look like it's real, but tomorrow you can't find it anywhere. Mm. Whatever exists will always exist. If we're the things that are only appear to exist, are the material manifestations that are here today and gone tomorrow. They're not real in terms of Vedanta discourse. I mean, are the things that, do you think that things that happen to you in a dream are real? When in a dream you made $1 million and you woke up and you looked in your bank and it's not there. So you think, well, you're accustomed to think that it might be nice, my dreams, but they're not real. But we don't give them credence because they don't last for very long. We give credence to that which, to the extent that something endures, that's a large factor in determining its realness. Things in the waking state endure longer, so we tend to think they're more that they're real, give them more value, concerned about them. But they don't last, right? In the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is not even that big. This life is, what is it, 100 years, 108 years out of beginningless time. Like a dream to Brahma. A moment, right? A moment. And we give so much credence to our acquisitions, our attachments, and so forth. I don't know. Atma Sat. Also, how big is that small spark? How big is that? It's bigger than everything in the whole world. Therefore, aparayamitastamyam prakritimini param. Jivabhuta mahabhahuya idam. It's running the whole world, making the whole world go round. Consciousness, turning the whole machine on, right? So it's sat, differentiating it from all material manifestations. It's sat. It's real. It's truth. It's eternal. And it's cognizant. Chit. It's real. Something could exist but not know. But you can't know and not exist, right? Something could exist and know but not love, but you cannot love and not be cognizant and not be. This is the equation. Satchidananda, giving another definition of Atma, instead of just what it's like to be something. The fact that it speaks of an experiential reality. We're saying it's Sat Chit Ananda. And we're saying ultimately, in terms of those constituents, in the heart of it, it's Ananda. Why? Because Sat, Chit, Ananda. Chit and Ananda derive from Chit and Sat derive from Ananda. Because if you love, you have to know and you have to be. But you could be and not know, not love. You could be and know and not love. But if you love, if Ananda is a feature of the Atma, then it also has to be Chit and Sat. So ultimately, consciousness It's about love. Hmm? It's about Ananda. Hmm? Now our Ananda is unmanifest. Hmm? It's the counter opposite, the pratiyogan of dukkha. Hmm? That's what it means, the counter opposite. Hmm? What's the counter opposite of dukkha, of suffering? Hmm? It's not the absence of suffering. Jiva Swami makes this point in the Sandarbhas. Hmm? He makes the point. He says, we're not talking about the Jiva, but talking about Advaita Vedanta in his Sarva Sambhadani, which is a commentary on of his own Sandarbhas. He says that the Shruti says that Brahman is Vijnanamanandam. Hmm? But the Advaitins say this simply means that Brahman is the counter opposite of suffering and inertness. Therefore, it is absence of suffering and consciousness, which would be the opposite of, counter opposite of inertness. Hmm. But Jiva Goswami says, but the counter opposite, the pratiyogan of suffering is not the absence of suffering, it's ananda. Hmm. And he says the same thing when talking about the jiva growing from Ramanuja Sampradaya. Hmm. But it's unmanifest. It's knowledge. It's ananda is unmanifest. It has been said to be like a particle of Brahman. What is Brahman? Hmm. Brahman is Satchidananda, but it's Ananda is it's it is Satchidananda, manifestation of God, in which his Swarup Shakti is unmanifest. Hmm. Not that it's not there, but it's not manifest. Jiva Goswami says, if it wasn't unmanifest in the first place, it would never manifest. Hmm. He gives the example like a well. In a well, there's water, right? But to get the water, you have to dig a hole. Hmm. But the digging of the hole, it may look like it creates the water, but it doesn't. In fact, the water creates the digging. The water creates the digging. Because if you know, if I tell you there's water in the ground and you believe me, and there is, then you dig. The water is making the digging. So the Swabhav, Sanatana Goswami asked the question in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, why some jivas love Krishna in one way, some another way? Because Krishna wants to taste different things, so he puts a different taste in different jivas. He says his will is fathomless, deeper than millions of oceans. He's the rasik, that's what he does. When Rupa Goswami asked the same question, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says, here are these different rasas, I've detailed them. Question is there a hierarchy in this? If there is, and Madhurya Rasa, which is the last one I spoke about, is the highest, why doesn't everybody choose it? Right? Some people choose other rasas. He said, well, because of impressions. Impressions means sadhusanga, subsequent spiritual practice, and so forth. What is that? Even the analogy I just gave. That's digging. That's digging. That has to be there too. But the water is there, therefore there's digging. And in the ultimate issue, the digging becomes one with the water. Because amongst, well, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Rag Bhakti, what has he said in Rag Bhakti Chandrika? There are direct causes of the bhav, causes in the parentheses. Just like we say, God created the world. But actually, All the ingredients are already there. You just put them together. You didn't make something out of nothing, right? You have to. We're limited by language, right? What was it? So, um, sorry, I got a little bit distracted for a moment. Um, hmm? Oh, anyway, so the sadhana, the practice, the impressions, are uh, what that that correspond with the swabha, with the water in the well. He says there are direct causes of the swabhav manifesting, like shravanam, kirtanam, smaranam. And as the swabhav manifests, they become one with the swabhav itself. Therefore, they are actually expressions of the swabhav in the spiritual world itself. Chanting is going on there too, right? Yeah, yeah. And sadhana and sadhya become one. So somehow we got onto that subject. Um,
It's not the opposite.
yeah, we explained that and how we got there. That's the question. So, at any rate, we were talking about science and consciousness and where it's going and so forth. And it's going to let them embrace Mayavad. That's good. Then we can show the charm of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. What is the nature of consciousness? Is it just eternal existence? I mean, it's not very appealing. I heard this one speaker, Jnani, speaking. He said that that transcendence is like deep sleep. Everybody wants to sleep, right? I'm thinking, not so sure, but that's a very good argument. In deep sleep, the mind turns off. Oh, that's great. And so the action turns off and it's just restful. Aren't you? You're not stressed by your mind and your senses chasing you. Well, yeah, actually, in one sense, yeah. So then the goal is just deep sleep. It's totally peaceful. It just keeps giving an analogy. This is you can find this in the schools of Vedanta. It has some merit to it, but I mean, what we're saying is, yeah, that there's movement on the other side. There's movement. If there's love, there has to be movement. The bliss can't just be the the absence of suffering. That's all it amounts to. That's very, very abstract. Sure, if we attain Brahma Sayuja and don't realize that, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur says is an indistinct form of realization, and Sanatana Goswami agrees, and Rupa Goswami has also said the same thing. You haven't realized you're the Haridas. Yeah. This is a great, from the Gaudiya point of view, this is a great loss. Better you stayed in the karmic world. This is a chance to get the kind of association by which you could realize that. So this, anyway, idea in modern society of reducing consciousness to matter, it's just not getting anywhere. It's starting to spin its wheels. So there are heretics, people coming out speaking about idealism again, which was Bishop Berkeley was one of the first guys to come up with that. He was speaking on an individual basis. How can everything just be in your mind? Am I just part of your mind? Does a tree fall in the forest if no one's watching it? Something like that. But we think this is a universal mind. It's the mind of God. Everything's in the mind of God. We're part of the dream of God. That's a beautiful way to think about things. We won't feel as important and as central to everything as we do, unfortunately. So they're running into problems with that. And then where they'll go from there to is more broad, abstract way, they all become Maya bodies. That's good. It's fun to preach to the Maya bodies. We have a lot of, now we've covered a lot of ground. We have a lot we agree on here, and then we can go from there. As I said before, you can back and forth with a learned Maya body all day long, and he'll find the holes in your philosophy, and you'll find the holes in his philosophy. And every philosophy has holes in it because what we want transcends the limits of thought and words. But in the end, we can play the final ace in the hole. We can say, that's right, you're right. Yeah, but ours is more charming. He has to go, yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. I don't believe it, but it is more charming if it was true. There's no doubt about that. And it would be more attractive because you can make a good case to people. Is this what the whole thing is? Go to sleep? Is that better to have loved imperfectly than to never loved at all? I'll stay here and love imperfectly rather than entering in Brahman. This is extraordinary statement. This is Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So consciousness. Somehow we got into consciousness and its nature, and of course it's relevant to our overall discourse and so forth. But back to Guru Maharaj and his responses to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that led the Saraswati Thakur to say to send someone else, right? There's this idea. So now then, in modern times, when I met Pujyapat Sridhar Maharaj, for him to have a temple in Britain, it was like, wow, that's a huge thing. And then he found out, we own a temple. We only owe, $200,000 on it, or $1 million, whatever. Then he was like having a heart attack. Oh my God, because he wasn't used to that. If you get a temple, you pay for it all, and it's isn't under threat of being taken by the bank or whatever. So he wanted that to be paid off. So he asked if I could help with that and engage these couple of sannyasis. So I said I would try. So I brought them to America, and then this Debashish and what was his name? Dayanidhi. These were two brahmacharis, disciples of Guru Maharaj. They came. I housed them and helped them raise money to pay for that initial building there. And now the two of them are in charge of the two buildings that they have. So it's very nice to meet with them after 40 years again since the last time I saw them. They're hosted me very nicely, gave me opportunity to speak and so forth. And I was a very interesting species for them because I go way back. I'm an original member of the Mahamandal that Sridhar Maharaj created, and he asked certain of us to initiate and start missions and cooperate voluntarily with one another and so forth, aside from his own mission, Chaitanya Saraswat Math, preceding is making Govinda Maharaj the successor of Chaitanya Saraswat Math itself. But I haven't been in the loop of Chaitanya Saraswat Math and all of its goings on, because I'm following Guru Maharaj and have my own small group of all of you, busy with writing and so forth and so on. And I kind of stepped back a little bit because I thought there might be some problems. And they told me there have been some problems, Maharaj. Yeah, I don't need to hear about them, but anyway, it was very nicely hosted there. And then we had another program at a place in London called Om Nom, very nice place. And some of the devotees from Chaitanya Saraswati Math came to that as well. And then we had another program near the big temple, the manor in Watford, and some of those devotees came as well. So we were building up a congregation as we were following as we went. It was very nice. It's been very, very, very well received here. Now my first time in Brighton. This was not supposed to be a talk tonight. This is supposed to be a little gathering. But yeah, I've been very treated very nicely. It's humbling, and given a receptive ear. So it's drawn some things out for me. that I haven't said before. I'm very pleased to hear them. So, what else? Any thoughts? Any questions?
Can you tell us more about the visit yesterday, Manor?
Well, the visit at the manor was the first time I went to the manor was in 1973, which is the year that the deities were installed there. It was a long time ago. I was sent there to preach and for a couple of weeks, and they had no heat in the building at that time. That's how early it was. I don't know how they heated the deity, but it was a cold stay in a cold place. And I came from Southern California, so I was in Los Angeles. A little bit of a shock, but yeah, it's grown so much. It's it's incredible. I mean, it's just mind-boggling how big it is. And there's a huge um, congregation of um, I would say ethnic Hindus, would be a way to refer to them, who are, in my impression, so much more integrated with the British culture than those who've come to the United States are. And they have a much, and being, although they're more integrated with the culture in Britain is such that it provides them more facility to remain attached to their own culture than it does in the United States because of the long, long relationship of Britain and India. Interestingly enough, which was a relationship that didn't bother Bhakti Vinod, as much as there's so much criticism of colonialism and so on and so forth, and many heady things written about that and whatnot. He wasn't bothered by it. He thought we learned some things from the British people. His perspective was they're our younger brother. He wrote it like they're our younger brother. We should be kind to them, and they've shown us some good things. The younger brother can come up with some good ideas too. But we have we're older, so we have more wisdom. And they may be listening now because they're younger brothers. They're just a little upstarts and so forth, and we shouldn't be mad at them. We shouldn't fight with them. And this was his idea, how to conquer the British. That's a nice idea. This was his idea, very Chaitanyite kind of idea, how to conquer the British. You're our younger brother, and we're so much thankful for all the things that you've shown us, things that you've done. They don't mean very much in the ultimate picture of things, but we are in the relative world, the empirical world. We have to deal with it, and so some tools that's useful. This is the idea. But let's put a harness on. Let's not go too far. Let's bring in the big picture also. This is his idea. So he wasn't part of the burgeoning early days of revolution. He pushed back theologically on theological thoughts, as I mentioned. And here, Britain is, it's got a lot of Indian people here. I mean, that's the main congregation at the manor. They had 60,000 people, they told me, come for Janmashtami. But yeah, it's a big project. They had 60 cows. They have a nice goshala, nice system for caring for them. Very nice. And I went and we had a darshan of the deities. And during the darshan of the deities, there was 2 or 3 devotees who were doing kirtan, sitting and singing, so forth. They were singing Mahamantra. So after I paid my respect to the deity, I went and sat down with them. And then those devotees who accompanied me, they came, sat down, and we joined the kirtan. I think they were pleased with that. And then all of a sudden, they started singing Prabhupada's song, where he speaks about his ambition for Sakirasa. I thought, where are we here? We're in a nice place. And they sang through the whole song, and they had it on us. They had this electric thing where I guess he was typing in different songs, and they would come up on the board. It was just time for that one. There it was, and so everybody could sing along. It was very nice. This is Prabhupada's poem that he wrote on the ship when he came across. And in that poem, he aspires for entering into the cowherding leelas of Krishna as a Gopa. Very, very deep, very profound. Sridhar should memorize the poem, pertinent parts of the poem. To our surprise, one day he starts speaking about them, about his reasoning as to Prabhupada's inner life and so forth. It was very compelling. So that was nice feature. And then I met with the president of the temple, Vishaka Devi, and her husband, who Yadubar, who I've known for forever. They're when we were just in our 20s, 21, 22. It's a long time. They were there in New York, as Prabhupada called it, in Los Angeles or something. He was a film maker, and so he carried that propensity and occupation into ISKCON. He made so many films about Prabhupada. He's still doing that, taking the old material and improving it, digitalizing everything and so forth. And she was a photographer. She brought that also into Prabhupada's Leela. She got out on so many morning walks. Everybody couldn't go on the morning walk with Prabhupada. They used to make this announcement. They're probably going on a walk at 7 o'clock. Only the GBC and the sannyasis can go on the walk, we were all cooperative, okay. Obviously we couldn't all, 1,000 of us in Mayapur, go on the walk. Then again, I mean, don't read too much, right? It's not a geographical location, right? So, but I went anyway. And some of them didn't like it, but Prabhupada talked to me. He said, "Oh, Tripurari, what are they saying? What are the people saying?" Because I was always out in the field, preaching to people, selling books. So they had to let me go there. But she used to come too, Vishaka, because she had a camera. She was taking pictures. That's her excuse. But how much we are indebted to her for so many pictures. They used to publish, a new picture every every month in the Back to God. I used to live for that picture. Back to God is coming. I've got a new picture of Prabhupada. That would make my day just to see that. How indebted I am to her. She wasn't the only photographer, but one of the main. So they used their talents nicely, and they continue to do so. She's also an author. She wrote a couple books. She gave me one. It's more or less about her life and meeting Prabhupada and some of the struggles of a woman in ISKCON, experiencing such a distortion of Prabhupada's teaching that we're the very antithesis of what he taught. By persons who just gravitated to the fringe of what the teaching is and made relative considerations absolutes and so forth. It's very unpleasant. I never had any like that in me. When I first came to the Los Angeles temple, I had joined in the Santa Cruz Mountains of California. It's about 6 or 7, 8 hours from Los Angeles. I was living there with my wife, and she was pregnant, and I was teaching the Krishna book. I had gotten the Krishna book. I didn't know where to go, but I was reading it and explaining it. I can't imagine what those classes were like. But there was this guy who was living with, a gay man who was living with us. He was a very tall guy, and he had long hair, very tall and long hair. So whenever devotees would come on Sankirtan, he'd travel around California hitchhiking, which we used to do in those days. He'd go anywhere. You'd see the devotees, and he'd go in tent. He looked like Lord Chaitanya, long hair down to his shoulders. So he was living with us in a room, and he used to put on this orange sheet whenever he would see the devotees and dance around with them. So actually, I'll tell a little bit more, a little bit background. I had gone to, I was living in the mountains in Jamaica with my wife. We built a bamboo hut to live in. One Rastafarian there, who was old and senior, had given up smoking marijuana. He helped me, showed me how to live there and build and so forth. And our idea was to meditate, and become God conscious, self-realized. So I was chanting Hare Krishna to myself. I didn't know where to find the devotees from, but I had read it on the back of a package of incense. But then we learned to grow vegetables, roots, and things like this on a hillside. It was a foothill, so it was hill. We were the only white people, as far as you could see or think. Um, but but the rain came, and after all this work to build this bamboo hut, it's washed away the hut, and that was just like too much for me. A lot of mosquitoes too, so it was like meditating, and I don't want to kill a mosquito, but they're killing me. So I said, let's go find the Krishnas, let's do that. And so we hitchhiked, we got a plane back out to Florida and hitchhiked to California. And I had the Krishna book because I had stopped in Florida, and it was New Year's Eve, and we stayed at what we call crash pads in those days. People just had houses where they live and you could come sleep there. You needed a place to crash, as they would say. So in the morning, I thought I went and begged some vegetables, and my wife and I, we cooked some like vegetable, stew or something like that for the household of people. And it was New Year's Eve, and they said, "Oh, we only eat raw food." Okay, well, I tried, and I was talking with them, and they were very disappointed because another year had gone by and they had not become enlightened. And they were very morose, and I was like upbeat about the prospects. So they said to me, I looked on the bookshelf, and there was this book, big fat book, tall book. It said KRSNA on the side, and I thought, hey, what's that book? They said, oh, that's what you need. You need that book. They told me. They gave me that book, and I said, where are these people? They said, oh, they're in Coconut Grove there. So I went there. Mm. But that was before I went to Jamaica. Mm. I had my tickets and everything. I thought, I've got to go. So I spent the night there. And on my way back, then I had the Krishna book, but I was reading it, and I was and reading it and looking for cows along the way. See the cows, and I think of Krishna because I had seen the picture of Krishna by now. And when I got to back to Santa Cruz Mountains, what the devotee said, "Oh, you came back. You're not in samadhi yet. And I had the Krishna books. I was talking about, Krishna consciousness. They said, "Oh, there's a Berkeley festival. There's a Berkeley festival the next week." So I said, "Well, we have to go." So I was enthusiastic enough to get their enthusiasm. So we all got in a Volkswagen van, and drove to San Francisco. Berkeley, they had the festival. They had a big deity of Lord Chaitanya in the park, volunteer park, and the festival was chant all day long. And there was a table, they were selling books, and then they were distributing halava. And there were a lot of like carnations and flowers and so forth. So we were chanting and chanting, and then I took one flower, and I thought, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was like this pose. I thought, I will throw the flower. If he catches it in his hand, then I'll know that he's accepted me. I want to join. And he caught it. Landed right in the palm of his hand. I thought, I've been accepted. Nobody asked me to join or anything. So they all went home, and I went home. But I was a member now. So, so living in Santa Cruz Mountains, I shaved my head, and I would read from the Krishna book, and people would come, and I would talk to them. But this fellow that lived with us, the tall guy, he had this orange sheet that he would put on. So when he saw me with a shaved head, he said, "Hey, you need this more than me." He gave me the orange sheet. So there I was. And then this traveling Sankirtan party of brahmacharis from the Los Angeles temple came to Santa Cruz, the town of Santa Cruz, to open a preaching center. And they heard that this guy up in the mountain there, and he's like one of you. And so they came up to see me, and they said, I was doing everything wrong. Your household, you can't wear that color, you can't do like this. I said, okay, I'm ready to join. Something like that. So yeah, that's how I joined. But how we get there? So
about woman
I came to Los Angeles, right? We came to Los Angeles, and big temple, and they told me, now when you go in, make sure you bow down, I had been we had spent 3 months in a preaching center. Hmm? So I was going out and selling back to God in magazines and books and so forth. And I had a penchant for talking to people. I never had any really education or training, job training or anything, but I liked to talk to people about things that I'm interested in, So I was very interested. So I was pretty good at selling magazines and books to people. So when we probably would have came to Los Angeles after 3 months, so we went there, stay. And Prabhupada said, "You stay here. Your wife is too pregnant, so you stay here in Los Angeles." So we stayed. That's a little long story, then, but a nice story. But anyway, my point was that I never had any like these sexist kind of ideas. So the first time I had the opportunity, they do offer the lamp, right? Hmm? So we have devote men were on this side, women were on this side, and then there was an aisle in the middle, which would Prabhupada's seat was here. Prabhupada would see the deities, or the deities would see the Vyasas on the Prabhupada when he wasn't there. And so after the lamp is offered to the deity, then it's taken around for everybody to touch it. So first time I got it, I went around, touched it to all the men. I went over, touched it to all the women, and they said, "You can't do that. You can't go over there and give the lamp. You have to give it to a woman so she can give it to them." Never made a lot of sense to me. I mean, I understood some parts of it, but anyway, it's just an aside. Vishaka was part of her book. I was talking about that she told the story of her, trials and tribulations apparently pretty well. I really, it was very touching, I know that, and something that I feel bad about that the movement was like, and some devotees continue to be like that, but what can be done? You can preach against it, right? Set a better example. So,
And did you speak about this, how you didn't move away?
that's another story. Yeah, that's another story. Yeah, we have that in common. Mm. But I used to train the devotees, women to sell books also, and I became good at that. Mm. Always, there was always room for them as much as anybody that was enthusiastic. Didn't matter what color they were, what gender was they were. Even if they would change their gender, it didn't matter to me. They wanted to sell a book or preach or but hear from me. I'm happy to minister to them. But that's another story. Yeah, she's as I said, a famous photographer at ISKCON, and it was a very extraordinary moment in ISKCON's history, which was the opening of the Krishna Balaram temple. It was a huge thing for Prabhupada. I mean, just huge, 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 huge. That's where he started his canvassing, and so to come back to Vrindavan and open a temple and have his disciples from all over the world accepted there, it was a really big thing for him. And he put Krishna Balaram in the center and so forth. So when the temple opened, Prabhupada was offering the artik to Krishna and Balaram. I was right there in the front. The place was just like this, all the disciples of Prabhupada just packed in. And when Prabhupada turned, he was fanning with the charmer, he turned the fan. And I was in such ecstasy, I was weeping all over the banister. These banisters around the altar, weeping and weeping and weeping. And Vishaka was behind me. She said, Maharaj, move. I got to, take it. I could hear it was Vishaka, but I was not going to move. Don't bother me now. She said, it's for the preaching. That's for the preaching. And I guess from my perspective, I must have moved involuntarily. I didn't care if it was for the preaching or anything, but moved enough without doing it consciously that she was able to take the picture. It's a very famous picture. Hmm. Okay. Do you have a copy of that book? We put it on the front of the book. Oh, okay. Picture of Prabhupada doing Arctic. She got that picture. Hmm. So she tells that story, and I tell that story, and we tell it from a different angle. We have that in common. It's a nice meeting point for us. It was very nice to meet them after so many years, and they were very receptive. And they didn't know that I had speaking engagement. They said they would have come. So next time, if I'm sure they'll still be here. So we can hope to have them come to one of our gatherings and learn something from them also. So it's been a nice visit, and so we have a few more sessions here, right? And I'm speaking from the book. Have you been reading the book? So say a circle of friends. Yeah, it's getting circulated. It's got very nice response from all kinds of devotees. Some scholars too read it, and the narrative that's going around about the book. It's the narrative that fits the book, which is written on the cover of the book. What the book's about. Mm. And so I'm pleased that because I felt it was a very accurate description of the book. And people are agreeing that it fills a gap that's been there in the Sampradaya for a long time. Mm. So, yeah, a little service. Rupa Goswami left us a little bit of service. He created in his spiritual imagination the Priyanarmasakas. He created them. Mm. And while the book is about Sakirasa, in particular, it also is about the Narmasaka, these friends of Krishna whose friendship is imbued with some measure of the sweetness of Madhurya that enables them to participate in a supportive way in his romantic life. And this come from Rupa Goswami in the whole tradition of Indian aesthetics. This Priyanarmasaka is one of his contributions. But who knows that? So when I realized that, I thought, well, here's some service. Develop that, lay that out. But after all, it's one of his contributions. So there's always some, if you look carefully, they've done a lot. They've done everything, the founding acharyas, and still there's more to do, more to be found in their texts to explain, write about, which is the very nature of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Its eternity is, there's new things happening in eternity. How does that work? Because what we're talking about is eternal newness. So prema is full, but it's always expanding at the same time. Leave it to Gaudiya Vaishnavism to make it hard. It doesn't fit between the ears so well. It's for exploding the mind and stopping the mind, as I said earlier, so that we can know more than we can ever think we know. Know by thinking. What else?
Tell us about the cows.
No. They were very friendly. They were very, very friendly, yeah. They were very friendly, and there was some really big oxen, and taller than me, quite a bit taller than me. They were big breed. But they were very friendly. They have a nice system for them because they only milk 10 cows, and they only let cows have two calves and 4 years apart. So when heifer becomes mature enough to bear a calf, then she gives birth to the calf. They milk, and 4 years later they let her get pregnant again, and then they retire her after her lactation arc of her lactation has reached its end. So that's easy on them, and it's nice. They have two children, and it also works into their the sustainable model, because if every cow in these normal dairies, it's all about economics. So it's just a business, and so every cow gets a calf every year, and after 5 years, well, they retire the calf in not the nicest way, to say the least. So it's a very different system. They've got a lot of acreage for pasturing them as well. So it's very nice, very very nice setup and all. Mm. Big cows though, very big. Go Seva ki jai. Or Bhakta Brinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hmm.